This is a risky one, folks. Okay, don't get me wrong, I'm not about to say that either of Schumacher's films are good. There is a reason Batman and Robin is one of the most well-known bombs in box office history. All I want to do is examine the film from a different perspective than most have in the past, and offer up the possibility that maybe the fan base overreacted a little. I mean, think about it. There are few films in the history of cinematic failure that have had as much hate and scorn thrown at them as Batman and Robin, but why? For this level of infamy, it can't just be bat nipples and ice puns. People to this day act personally offended by the film, as though Joel Schumacher committed a crime against comic books just by making it. To look at why this film earned such unending spite, we're gonna need to look a little deeper. As always, let's sum up the general consensus in The Sanity Center.
It's so overproduced. Every scene is so action-filled that the movie does all of the thinking and emoting for us, and you just sit there looking at dazzling effects, yes, but you still feel bored.
You sit there feeling brain damaged and praying for the mayhem to cease.
This Batman movie has stopped moving forward with its dark storyline and complex character development, and has instead gone back to the campy, bright, and colorful style of the original Adam West TV show.
Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Okay, so, there are quite a few complaints that are levied at Batman and Robin, many of them valid, but, the one that sticks out to me is this complaint that the movie borrows heavily from the tone of the Adam West TV series, and to that, I have to ask, so? Seriously, why is the very fact that Schumacher wanted to emulate the style of the TV show a bad thing in and of itself? I mean, I don't know if you've actually watched the show in a while, but despite what Batman fans might tell you, it's actually really, really good. In fact, I'd call it one of the best things to come out of 60s television. Hell, the original movie was one of my childhood favorites. I used to watch this on VHS over and over again to the point of memorization, and watching it again as an adult, it still really holds up. And let's face it, were it not for this show, all those other great Batman things you love would have never existed. Besides being classic television and one of the finest examples of camp comedy, Adam West's Batman was the entity that propelled the character into mainstream popular culture. Were it not for this man making Batman a household name, Tim Burton's Batman, Bruce Timm's Batman, Chris Nolan's Batman, none of them would have ever been made, simply because the franchise would never have escaped the comic book page and wouldn't have been considered marketable enough. Even if you don't like the TV show, and you should, you still owe its very existence a lot. Really, in terms of the more campy direction the film's only real crime, colossally poor timing. If this film had come out 10 years earlier, no one would have made this kind of a fuss. Comic fans had spent the 80s reading stuff like The Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns. They knew Batman as a dark and serious franchise, and it bothered them that everyone else, being only familiar with the TV show, was unable to take their fandom seriously. Tim Burton had finally brought the idea of serious, dramatic Batman stories into the mainstream, bringing all the fans the vindication they so craved. So when one movie dared to remind them of that series they so hated, the show that had made their hero a joke, the show that had brought them so much mockery and ridicule, they lost their fucking minds.
Joel Schumacher is history's greatest monster! Get it!
Many Batman fans still hold a grudge against Adam West and the entire Silver Age in general. They're so fixated on Batman being dark and realistic that they refuse to tolerate the existence of any other take on the character. Well, this narrow-mindedness has gone far enough, and who better to address it than a veteran of the Silver Age itself? Exactly. Batman spent just as much time in blue as he has in black, and neither one is a betrayal of the character. In fact, I'll let you gritty realism supporters in on a little secret. Batman can never be realistic.
You lie!
No, seriously. Even ignoring the impossible Marty Sue he evolved into over the years, Batman at his core is just too over the top to be realistic. Not that he can't be serious or dramatic, but he has to do so on his own terms, within his own unique world. He just can't fully conform to the standards of realism we hold other crime films to without it becoming unintentionally silly. Batman is operatic and melodramatic. It's the story of a child being orphaned in the most poetic way possible, leading to the mother of all overreactions, declaring war on crime itself. Any sane man can tell him he will never reach his goal. Crime will never cease, children will continue to be unfairly orphaned, and yet he's pouring millions of his own money into a futile one-man war on petty street crime, just to work through his own daddy issues. Looking at it from that perspective, Tim Burton is really the only filmmaker who ever fully understood the Batman mythos and managed to strike the right tone. Not only did he get the 30s pulp crime novel feel right, which is arguably the setting in which the character feels the most natural, but also, Burton realizes that Batman only makes sense if you acknowledge that he's slightly insane.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
On the other hand, Chris Nolan, for all his talent, has never demonstrated any real understanding of how Batman works. It's a miracle his films are as good as they are. You watch Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and while they're both excellent movies, it can't be denied that there is a serious problem with the tone. You got all these characters behaving like they're in a Michael Mann film, and then Christian Bale walks in with his laughable voice and awkward, over-designed costume and kills the mood entirely. I mean, think about this. Nolan spent an entire movie just explaining Batman in excruciatingly unnecessary detail. He explained the cave, the ears, the belt, the cape. He explained the fucking gauntlet claws, for Christ's sake. And after all that effort, the costume just ends up looking impractical for entirely different reasons, and any attempt at realism shoots itself in the foot. The whole movie is just about contriving ways to awkwardly cram Batman into a world he just doesn't belong in. Nolan is clearly not comfortable with the character. Overdramatic pulp mythology is not his thing. Ultimately, even Schumacher may have understood Batman better than Nolan did. You heard me. So no, wanting to take the films in a more campy direction was not Schumacher's mistake. His mistake was not sticking with it. If I asked you to name all the silly or campy scenes in Batman and Robin, or even Batman Forever, you would not be hard-pressed. But the thing is, many of these scenes, taken out of context at least, are perfectly serviceable camp comedy action scenes. However, when you put them in a movie with scenes like this...
I love you, old man. And I love you, too.
Or like this...
I would use its image to strike terror into the hearts of those who did evil. I would ensure what happened to me would never happen to anyone else again. I would have my revenge.
They clash. It seems like both the movies are trying to be two entirely different entities at once, which I imagine is the product of the director and the studio having different results in mind. See, Batman Returns had slightly smaller returns than Warner Brothers wanted. And it received quite the parental hand-wringing for being a little more, Burton-ish than the last film.
Sir! I can't believe this. I mean, this is worse than the first one.
We just show these movies, madam. We don't make them.
So they wanted something more marketable, more family-friendly, more toy-line compatible, more
toyetic.
Neon Talking Super Street Bat Luge. Activate.
Ready when you are, Cape Crusader. Get low and let's go.
But at the same time, they wanted it dark and edgy like the first film that made so much money! Yeah, Hollywood never did figure out the whole can't have your cake and eat it too thing.